Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
Don't you understand, George? It's because you were not born.
Film church.
Well, a boy's best friend is his mother.
So you want to be a reporter? Here's some advice about this racket. Don't we ever change your mind. It may not be the oldest profession, but it's the best.
Hello, and welcome to Film Church Radio, the podcast that treats cinema as a religion. It's Sunday. I'm Branden.
And I'm Lewis.
And we are here to talk about movies. Each week, Lewis and I alternate picking a film for us both to watch and discuss. Today, I picked the film from 1952, Deadline U.S.A., starring Humphrey Bogart, Ethel Barrymore, and Kim Hunter, written and directed by Richard Brooks. This movie was suggested by a mutual acquaintance of Lewis and I, and I have put it off for a while, just haven't got around to it, and then finally I was like, let's just watch it, and then we can put our thoughts on the episode. But unfortunately, on the first viewing, I was not that impressed. Some of you out there might be shocked, because this movie is beloved by a lot of people, I found out. But then I watched the commentary, and then I rewatched the movie, and have a little more appreciation for it. To me, the essence of the film is about giving it everything you've got, even when you know it's your last dance. But we're going to get more into this film later in the episode. Be sure to stay tuned till the end of the episode, where you will find out what we're watching next week. I don't even know yet. Lewis is going to reveal it.
Do I know yet?
I don't know. Do you? First, we want to say thank you to everybody who's been listening. We really appreciate everyone being here, being a part of this congregation of film lovers. If you would, please go and tell your friends about it. Let people know so that we can keep growing our audience. Let us know what films you want us to watch. Follow us on everything at Film Church Radio. And we also post extra content on our YouTube channel, so check that out. You'll see some extra reviews on there. Before we get into the movie, which is Deadline USA, we're going to talk about movies other than Deadline USA that we've been watching this week. And Lewis has a huge list. I was like, holy moly. You've watched so many movies since we last recorded. So tell us about them.
Yeah, I've watched a lot. So I don't know, I get into this funk where I'm like, I haven't watched enough movies. So I just seem to end up watching 3 or 4 a day. And there was a day that I'll get onto where I'll watch 6. So,
wow. Yeah,
it's pretty crazy. I'm not going to talk about everything I've watched in the last week because, like you said, there's a lot. But I've picked out a few. So I rewatched High Fidelity from 2000. One of my all-time favorite films. It just speaks to me. It's about a 30-something media collector. He's got lots of records and kind of sets his life to soundtracks and top 5s, and I don't know. It just speaks to me on a certain level.
I know we talked about it a little bit when we did our Bernie episode, because we were talking about Jack Black, and I put it on my list, but I still haven't watched it. It's streaming right now, I think, somewhere. So
it's on HBO Max.
Okay,
that's where I watched it. Jack Black is phenomenal in it. Yeah. I think it's just hitting everyone at their peak, and it's got this really nice kind of laid backness to it. I don't know if that's not a word, but it just flows really well, and the music's really good, and it just worked. It's one of my comfort films. I feel like I can put it on at any point. I don't necessarily have to watch it, but I just every bit that I kind of come back to, I really, really enjoy. So yeah, if you haven't seen it, see it. I love High Fidelity.
I might watch it tonight.
Good. It's a good choice. And then I watched Harakiri, which is a Japanese film that's been on my list for a while. It's on the Letterboxd like top 250. Directed by Masaki Kobayashi, and basically it's about a samurai that kind of comes to, well, not really a samurai, I guess he ex-samurai, comes to like this house and asks them basically to commit harakiri on their land. It's, I guess it's some kind of like honor or something like that. There's something behind it. I can't quite remember exactly why they need to do it on, somebody else's ground. But as the story develops, there's more to it than there seems. And there's a point towards the end that I text our friend Zach, who has seen the film already, and I was open-mouthed. Like, I could not believe that happened. I don't know. It's just such a great lesson in storytelling and kind of drip feeding, because it kind of flashes back and forward and back and forward. And it was great. I mean, it deserves to be as widely touted as it is. Yeah. And I gave it 5 stars, which says a lot. I think it was phenomenal. And then I watched another 5-star film, A Man Escaped. Which, have you ever seen A Man Escaped?
I have not, no.
A French film from the 50s, directed by Bresson. And it's a great kind of... my words aren't coming today. It's a great experiment in minimalism. Mm-hmm. It's called A Man Escaped, and basically that is the plot. A man is trying to escape from prison.
Yeah.
But it's so... I mean, there's nothing to it. There's no set decoration. It's just kind of him talking over what he's doing to escape from prison. Yeah. Which sounds really kind of mundane, but I don't know how they did it. It's so gripping. Yeah. It's pretty incredible. Sweet. And I had seen that at university when I was there, and I remember thinking a lot of it then. Yeah. But I hadn't watched it since. So I'm glad I got a chance to revisit.
Nice.
And then I've got these film noir box sets that Indicator put out from Columbia Pictures from the 50s. Yeah. And they came out pretty quickly, and I've been meaning to kind of sit down and try and go through them all. I went through the first one. There's about 6 or 7 films in each. So I started on the second one. I only managed to watch one. 7-Eleven Ocean Drive, which is a film noir. Basically, a guy kind of gets pulled into the underworld, basically, and then rises to the top. Typical story. Starring Edmund O'Brien, who I knew as being really good in films with better performances, if that makes sense. So he's always playing really good characters. He's always a really good actor, but there's always someone better than him in the film.
Gotcha.
He's in The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance with Jimmy Stewart and John Wayne. Just gets eclipsed. He's in White Heat with Jimmy Cagney. Yeah. Which for me is Cagney's greatest performance. So I was excited to see him
kind of something where he was
his own leading man. Yeah. And it was fine. It was, run of the mill. It didn't set my world alight. There wasn't a really funny bit towards the end where they're kind of running, the main guy and his mole are running away from the cops, and she just gets too tired. She's like, I can't do this anymore. Just go without me, and gets captured. And I'm like, I don't think I've ever seen someone just
give up
in these films due to fatigue. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it was, it was kind of that. I think that's going to stick with me more than the actual film itself. And then, me, Brandon, I fell into a deep, dark hole. And that deep, dark hole is called Hitchcock. This is the day that I watched 6 films in a day. Wow. I went and pretty much watched most of his kind of early, more of his transition films, his English talkie films, and then a few of the early American films.
Yeah, so most of the ones that are on your list here are before he comes to America, right?
Yeah, so I watched Sabotage, The Man Who Knew Too Much, Stage Fright, Saboteur, Young and Innocent, The 39 Steps, and then North by Northwest.
Okay.
That was over the course of like 2 days, but I did watch 6 films in a day.
So most of those, I guess most of those are kind of around the same time, and then North by Northwest is like way later.
Yeah, North by Northwest was I just wanted peak
rewatch
Hitchcock.
it.
Yeah. I'd gone through, because normally I do go to Vertigo's my favorite film of all time, so I go to that, Rear Window, Psycho, the kind of big hitters. But I was like, I really want to go back and watch some of the earlier ones, and 39 Steps is so good. I don't think it's talked about enough as like a Hitchcock great.
Yeah.
The set pieces are really good. The set design looks amazing. I love it. It's great.
39 Steps is kind of like his, one of his first big hits, right?
Yeah, it's like it's everything that Hitchcock became known for is in that film.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like that first foray into.
It's when like American producers started like paying attention to him.
Yeah, exactly.
And then trying to get him to come to America.
Yeah, which he did, because he made the film before that, The Man Who Knew Too Much, he actually remade in the US a few years later with Jimmy Stewart, which I hadn't seen The Man Who Knew Too Much a lot. I feel like I watched it when I was younger. It's got Peter Lorre in it, who I absolutely love, the killer in M.
Yeah.
So I rewatched that, and it just, some of them are hit and miss. There's like The Young and Innocent from 1937 was really entertaining. Like they used miniatures, like a little miniature car when they're doing like chase and stuff, and it was cool to watch. But then at the end, it climaxed with one of the characters being in blackface, and I was like, it's kind of, it just shows its age. You forget that these films are nearly 100 years old, and things have changed, but it is a bit of a. I was like, why aren't people talking about this more? This is fun. And then you get to the end, and you're like, okay, that's probably why.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So I've ordered a new biography to read. I'm sure there'll be a lot more Hitchcock watching over the next few weeks.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm in it. Every year or so, he kind of sucks me in, and I do a full rewatch. So
at some point, yeah. There's a lot of his work I still need to watch. Especially his later films. I know they're a bit more. They're not as popular and not as critically acclaimed, especially like the ones he made in the 70s.
Yeah.
But I'm curious as to see what those look like. You know what I mean? I think the oldest, or I guess most recent film of his that I've seen is maybe Marnie. And then I don't think I've watched anything after that, which I think is only like 3 films or something. He made so many movies, man. It's crazy.
He did, yeah. I mean, Frenzy is really good. I think that's his last film.
Okay.
Frenzy is really good.
He's one of those directors that like he was around for the entire like evolution of cinema. From the silent era up into the 70s when like the code was off the table and people were just doing all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy. He's a master.
Yeah. For a reason.
What have you been watching?
So, I've watched several things. I mean, not quite as many, but I've watched 4 movies. I rewatched Fatal Attraction from 1987 with Glenn Close and Michael Douglas. I had seen it like 10 years ago, maybe, but I was wanting to rewatch it, and I had found it for like 50 cents at the thrift store on DVD. So I was like, cool.
Bargain.
And then it turned out it was like on HBO or something anyway. But I got a physical copy.
That's that physical media, baby.
But it's good. I mean, it's I gave it a 3 out of 5. It doesn't hold up all that well. There's like it's one of those movies that does show its age a little bit, but I mean the performances are great. Like Glenn Close and Michael Douglas are really good in their roles, and it's still like a fun watch. You know what I mean? So, and then on Sunday, I guess it was, me and Sarah went to go see Nope in the cinema. And I won't say too much about it. Like, I didn't put my rating on Letterboxd because I knew you would see it.
Yeah.
So, we can talk about it after you see it, but definitely one of the best cinema experiences I've had in a long time. Like, overall experience, like watching all the trailers.
Yeah.
That whole everything, the movie was great. A lot of fun, and yeah, everybody should go see Nope immediately in cinemas now. And then speaking of comfort films, I watched Mean Girls from 2004, 5 out of 5.
The first film you ever bought from Kmart. Is that
Yeah,
right?
man. Yeah. We talked about that on the Hands on a Hardbody episode, where you can see the Kmart in the background that I bought my first movie at. Yeah, it was. I haven't watched it in a while. Like, I don't know how long it's been. It seems like it's been a long time, but it's weird rewatching a movie that you've seen so many times after not seeing it so long, because like you start watching it and you're like, I immediately started thinking, like, I have seen this movie so many times, like just every single line, like, is
just
great.
Comes back to you.
Yeah, it all just comes back, and it's one of those movies too that I think influenced me more than I thought, you know what I mean? Or just like, I mean, for one thing, it's about this homeschool girl that goes to public school, and she's like a fish out of water, which is relatable to me, like, I didn't go to school until I went to college, so, kind of felt the same and stuff, and, just things like that, and then it's just hilarious, It's one of, I don't know, that decade of comedy films feels like I don't know, it's its own time, like, it's not
like a heyday.
Like a heyday. It's maybe something that film historians might talk about, in another couple of decades as one of the high points of comedy films, because there's so many movies that, I don't know, we just don't see like those comedy films anymore, especially the rated R ones. And this one's like PG-13, but like the rated R ones are even more rare now, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think, because we had the emergence of Judd Apatow around that same time as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I mean, 40-Year-Old Virgin, Superbad, all the films he had his kind of fingers in worked really well. And I felt for a little bit, for a few years, we seemed to be getting back to it. I mean, we had Game Night. Have you seen Game Night?
Yeah, that was...
Bateman.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then there was like Blockers with John Cena.
Yeah.
And there was kind of like these bigger budget studio comedies, which like were funny and kind of, you could watch again. And I was like, okay, we're going, there's promise here. And then I feel like we kind of got The Rock and Kevin Hart.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, let's just put them two together.
Yeah, and everything.
Like, okay, well, that's funny up until, he's big, he's small.
Yeah.
But there's no creativity anymore. There's not that, emerging talent, which is a shame.
And then, I mean, also, I think with COVID and everything, it's like...
Yeah, no one wants to take a risk.
Yeah, nobody wants to take that risk, exactly. And things are kind of going straight to streaming and getting lost and all of that stuff. I think with
Booksmart maybe not doing so well, it kind of reined it in. Because it got really good reviews, but I don't think anyone saw it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately. So
yeah. See what happens. But yeah, I mean, and then speaking of comedies from that era, I Love You, Philip Morris from 2009. Jim Carrey and Ewan McGregor as a gay couple, and it's great. I saw it, I think when it came out. I don't know. There's this era from like 2008 to like 2013 that I kind of saw everything because I was working at a movie theater. Yeah. And I think this was one of those. And so I kind of remembered a few things, but rewatching it again, really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. Have you seen it?
That's awesome. I saw it a long time ago. I can remember watching it maybe on DVD at like my friend's house. He rented it. And I can't remember much.
Yeah. It's pretty great. It also is kind of like Texas based and based on a true story. Which is great. But I don't know what it is about those true stories based in Texas.
You're a sucker for them.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean that was it for me, and other than that, that's pretty much it. I haven't watched much TV. Well, I'm catching up with Better Call Saul, which is you gotta watch it. It's good.
I know. I'm watching Daredevil right now. So finished season 1 yesterday.
Nice.
2 episodes into season 2.
Are you hooked now that you're in season 2? Yeah.
Yeah, I think season 1 was really good in terms of like setting up the relationship between him and Foggy, and like, I don't know, the balance between like being a lawyer and being a superhero, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And then like introducing the Kingpin and like the underworld. Yeah. Vincent D'Onofrio is amazing as the Kingpin.
Yeah. So he's great.
And now we've got, it's just like, heck yeah, we've got the Punisher.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
it's exciting. It's like,
it is exciting because I knew that he was coming, but that first episode where like loads of people get wiped out and then you see him kind of walking through the hospital, I was like, oh god, it's now.
Yeah, you're like, oh, this has been him the whole time. Yeah, because you don't realize it at first. You think it's a villain or something, and then you're like, wait a minute.
I know. Yeah, you think it's like a whole army of people.
Yeah,
and then you realize that nope, it's just Frank Castle.
Yeah, I love the way they do it, and spoilers if you haven't seen the show, but it's really good. I love that, like Vincent, like you said, Vincent D'Onofrio's portrayal of the Kingpin is like, I mean, I grew up watching the 90s cartoon of Spider-Man, so that's kind of how I always saw the Kingpin, but then seeing Vincent D'Onofrio do something totally different that still worked. He's like basically a big baby. Yeah. That throws temper tantrums, like violent temper tantrums. It's great.
Yeah, I'm glad that it's coming back. It was announced. So, yeah, more Daredevil. So I'm going to try and watch it all before that stuff comes out.
Yeah, I really hope that Tom Holland and Vincent D'Onofrio get a scene together, because I think that they would be hilarious.
This is what we said on the Spider-Man podcast, right? It's just that, like, for our Spider, we want him to be street level, and I think that's what Kevin Feige kind of said. Yeah. So I'm hoping that all this will kind of tie in together, and maybe we'll get, the Prowler storyline, and that's how we'll get, exactly. A different Spider-Man introduced, maybe. Yeah. I mean, it's there, it's ripe. So yeah, come on, Marvel,
you can do it.
Yeah,
make us proud.
I know that I've talked about Marvel kind of exhausting me a little bit, but Spider-Man is the one thing that I'm like, you could release 7 a year and I'll be there opening night. So
yeah, exactly. Same here.
Yeah.
Sucker for spiders. But okay, so that was this is a kind of a harsh transition into the movie.
Do you want me to set you up?
Sure.
Newspapers.
Thanks. Speaking of newspapers,
here we go.
The Daily Bugle.
That's it. Dang it.
The film that we're talking about today, ladies and gentlemen, is Deadline U.S.A. from 1952, as we said, starring Humphrey Bogart. The IMDb summary is that with his I said this terribly, is that with his newspaper about to be sold, crusading editor Ed Hutchinson tries to complete an expose on gangster Rienzi. And if you still don't know what this movie is about, Sorry. I didn't really know what the movie is about after watching it the first time. All respect to people who love this movie, of course. We're just kind of going to give our experience of watching the movie and talk about Humphrey Bogart a bit. I know that Lewis is a big fan and knows a lot more about Bogey than I do. And has watched a lot of more older films, I think, than I have. So, yeah, I mean, like I said, watching this movie the first time, I just had a hard time following it, I think. I mean, it's a pretty tight hour and a half movie, but it's very dense. There's a lot of stuff going on. So, and by the way, like Lewis and I happened to actually watch it together. I was in town, and so we were able to watch it. We just didn't have time to record together. But after watching it, I was like, I don't know how to make an episode out of this because I don't really know what all just happened in the movie.
Yeah.
So I had to take some time to watch the commentary and then rewatch the movie again. And from the sound of it and all the stuff I've read, everything that's kind of going on in the movie is pretty accurate to the way that newspapers were run and that kind of work. Anybody that's worked in a newspaper can relate with this film pretty heavily. And I think the amount of like different plots that are going on throughout the movie and the fact that it's a little bit hard to keep track of everything that's going on is kind of similar to a newspaper. And like, you know, if you're a reporter or you're the head of a newspaper and you're trying to keep track of all these different stories and how they're going to fit into this paper, that's what it kind of feels like to watch this movie. Yeah. So what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I think with you, it's kind of similar. We start off and the newspaper seems so vivid and kind of real that at first you're not quite sure. It seems documentary-esque. You know, it's like the people running around, sending these stories off. And I think the biggest downfall, it's got to be studio related. I can assume that they wrote this script for this kind of newspaper movie about trying to save a paper and trying to kind of keep honest and, you know, not be bought out or anything like that. But the studio were like, oh, you need to have a love interest for the main character, and you need to have a character die in the printing press, and you need to have this. Right. And these things were just inserted to kind of make it, I don't know, a little more dramatic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because there's a lot in this film that doesn't feel like it belongs in this film.
Yeah.
And then at the end, it just ends. There doesn't seem to, there's not like a big, you know, it's Bogart gives a speech about integrity and newspapers, and then it's kind of like, hey, everything's fine. He's like, okay, cool. The end.
Yeah.
Nothing really seems to pay off the way it should. And I just think it's just a bit, there's just too much, they're trying to do too much.
Yeah.
As a whole. And that was my initial reaction to it. I was just like, I think there's too much going on here.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, the guy that did the commentary kind of, you know, there was several times throughout the commentary that he kind of talked about his first experience watching the movie. His father worked at a newspaper, and like he vividly remembers like his father getting emotional in several scenes. And yeah, I think it's, you know, for anybody that's worked at a paper, this is like their movie, you know, because it's like, you know, Bogart is the hero of the paper, and he's fighting to keep it alive. He's fighting for just good reporting. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like there's the scene, you know, after they find out that the paper is getting sold. And you can tell that everyone that works at the paper is like a family, right? And I'm sure that's how it felt to work at a paper. So when they find out that it's getting sold and they all go out for drinks, they're like putting on a funeral for the paper. They've got like the copy of the newspaper laid out on a table with like candles around it, and they're like singing and drinking and reminiscing and talking about how their founder, who has since passed, would be rolling over in his grave. And then there's like a scene with Bogart where he is holding the competitor's newspaper, and he has this whole spiel about how it's full of like puzzles and ads.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just like, it's kind of a film. A lot of films are kind of about this subject matter of like the changing of the times. We saw that a lot in the Westerns we watched of Sergio Leone, where it's like the railroad is being built and, progress and, technology taking over and things like that. And, so it's like, I can definitely relate to how passionate people are for this movie in terms of, people that, especially if you grew up reading the paper, if you grew up, even in the 70s or 80s or even 90s, I guess, like a lot of people even then had like paper routes and stuff like that. Like communities were involved in local papers and stuff like that. This is about a bigger paper, but, it's like a family, and, there's like loyalty involved, and nostalgia, and us as like movie lovers and history lovers, and I can see how certain people can become so attached to this film.
Yeah,
because like I said, Bogart is like he's like the champion of the film. He's like, he won't give up no matter what. Throughout the film, he's trying to fight for the newspaper, and even though at every turn it looks like the paper is going to get sold, he's still trying to put out the best stories, and report the news for the next day. Like his personal life is interwoven in the film a bit, and every second somebody's like, the phone is for you, the phone is for you, the phone is for you, and he's having to go back and forth and try to follow the stories and direct, what's going on. I probably am making the film sound better than it is. but like I said, a lot of people love this film, and I did enjoy it more the second time watching it. I kind of enjoyed Bogart's character a little more. The personal stuff, like you were talking about, it does feel a little bit just thrown in there, but it's kind of convenient, I guess, is the kind of the problem with it, because his ex-wife is going to get married to this other man. He's still in love with her, and she's like getting remarried on the night that like the court case is happening, where they're trying to sell the paper. It is it is a little tacked on, but it's like, I don't know, it gives Bogart a little more depth, I guess. I mean, whether you like it or not, it's kind of like he knows that the paper is going to die, and so he's like going back to his wife, who it's kind of stated in the movie that it didn't work out between them because he was so good at his job, so obsessed with his job and such a good newspaper man that he didn't have time for like a home life. So now that the paper's going under, he can like give time to his wife. But it is a bit of a weird storyline.
No, I agree. I think, all it's missing really is just one of the like other characters to say to Bogart, "Wow, you've got more than one deadline tonight." Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Yeah,
because it's kind of everything is culminating within 24 hours. Everything's kind of coming to a head all of a sudden, which is a bit heavy-handed, a little bit ham-fisted. But I mean, I don't know how else to to make this entertaining. Do you know what I mean? Like, all the ingredients are there, but it's just I don't feel like there's enough meat to it.
Yeah,
It's very bony, and we talked a lot about in the last 2 weeks ago when we talked about Facing the Crowd, how Facing the Crowd works so well because it's still precedent. It's still something that, is happening today, and it's relatable, and it was made 60, 70 years ago.
Right.
And this is the same. It's still relatable, but it just doesn't have the same punch. It just doesn't, it just doesn't, I don't know, hit in the same way, even though the world that it builds is so believable.
Yeah.
The kind of biting, the bite isn't there.
Yeah, I think if it was like if the whole Rienzi storyline, who was like a gangster in the film and he's like influencing elections, and it's like the story that Bogart is trying to go after the whole time to expose that he's like a murderer and all this stuff. I think if it was more of, I don't know, I was gonna say if it was more. Because to me, the kind of gangsterism that's going on today is like the billionaires that are out there influencing elections, but they're like doing things legally. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
the big climax could have been he was the one that was trying to buy the paper, and he's like, I'm going to run this place into the ground.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean that would have. He was trying to kind of hush up a story, try and pay Bogart off. And then he's like, I can just buy the paper.
Yeah.
But then
it's weird because I feel like the thing that is not working in the movie, especially watching it for the first time, which like you should always watch a film more than once, but unless you really hate it. But if you want to understand a film, you've got to watch it more than once, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's just so much, like watching it the second time, I had to kind of just keep track of everything that was going on. I mean, even the guy doing the commentary, he's like, at the end of Act 1, there's 4 parallel storylines going on. There's the menace of Rienzi, the mystery of the fur-clad nude, the sale of the newspaper, and Humphrey Bogart's relationship problems.
Yeah.
Which the Rienzi and the dead woman like end up becoming the same story by the end of it. But yeah, it's just so much going on, especially when he's walking through that newspaper. There's the woman reporter, which shout out to like female representation in the workplace in this, older movie, which was one of the positives. She's like, there's just like, you're seeing people talking about all the different storylines, scene after scene, and sometimes within the same scene. So it's a lot to keep track of in your head. And I feel like it's a negative, but I can also see how someone who has worked in a newspaper for years would love seeing that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it's realistic, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I know what you mean. It does have that kind of kinetic, like energy of reality. It's kind of everything's happening, everything's going on all the time, which does add to it. And it does, like I said, it does feel like a believable newspaper.
Yeah.
But I don't know what I was expecting from it. I think, given that Eddie Muller does the commentary and he's massive, he's huge in the world of film noir, and he even starts his commentary by saying, this isn't a noir film. And the poster is kind of Bogart up against a wall with 2 like henchmen. And I don't know what I was expecting. I think I was expecting more of like a, race against time. I don't know. Which it kind
trying
of
to
was.
Make the deadline.
Yeah, which it kind of was, but I don't feel like it was as, I don't know.
You didn't feel the tension.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think that is because there's too much stuff going on.
Yeah.
We could have definitely lost the relationship problems Someone could have just hinted at, like, you're working yourself into the ground. You've already had one marriage breakup because of it. And I would have been like, okay, that gives me enough backstory to carry on.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, if it was more of a straightforward kind of detective story, it might have been a little more universal.
Yeah. Yeah. I keep talking about how to make this film better, which I feel is kind of a pratfall. I don't really want to get into that with every film we talk about because, I'm not a filmmaker. But, I mean, there are things in it that I really liked. I think Bogart is magnetic. I'm obviously not the first person to say this. So, but he's amazing. I think I just love watching him on screen. I did really like parts of the dialogue. I thought that some scenes were really well done.
Yeah.
With the kind of back and forth and stuff like that. But yeah, it seemed a bit, and I know that he says this on the commentary, but it seems a bit preachy. There's, Bogart's giving these huge speeches where he talks about integrity and giving people what they deserve kind of thing and, reporting the news as it should be. And it's kind of like, okay.
Yeah, this is definitely one of those movies where I was like, you could pick any line in this movie for the opening quote of our show. Like, there's so many quotable things in the movie, which in real life it's not. Dialogue is never actually like that. Mm-hmm. But again, it's like, okay, I can see why people who've worked in a newspaper love this film so much, because he's just constantly championing what they had dedicated their lives to,
Yeah.
But yeah, like in terms of Bogart and his performance and stuff, I don't think I've seen a ton of his movies. He's one of those actors that I've always been a little bit confused by, I guess, is a good way to put it.
His
always
filmography is kind of very weird.
Yeah.
Because there's a whole period where you can tell that the studio, Warner Bros. Just didn't know what to do with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He's just one of those people where it took me a while to figure out what it is, like, what is it that people saw in him that, made him a star, made him a leading man and all that stuff. Like, it wasn't until I think I saw Casablanca that I was like, oh, okay, this is why he's great, And in this, he's very, he's very much the same. And I can't even think of like other films besides Casablanca and this that I've seen him in. I'm sure I have, but he's not like somebody I gravitate towards, I guess. So in your mind, what is it that people gravitate towards? Like,
Bogart to me is a warm hug. He's one of the first, when I first started getting into movies, like Hitchcock was obviously the first thing that kind of really wowed me. And I can remember I was looking at these people to kind of like to look at, and Bogart was one of the actors that I gravitated towards first. Okay. So he's very comforting to me as an actor. I love watching his movies. It just reminds me of like discovering cinema.
Yeah.
And his career is so weird. It starts off and he's kind of like the heavy. So he's in a few James Cagney films where Cagney is like the quote unquote hero of the story, or the one we're rooting for, and Bogart is the other guy who's kind of like worse than Cagney in terms of like, killing people and kind of being the antagonist. And then he got, Maltese Falcon, he kind of plays the detective.
I know, I've seen that.
Yeah, it's a little bit, he does have a love interest in it, but he's a bit, I don't know, he's a bit of a eunuch. He's not, a sex symbol. He's a private detective.
Yeah.
And then Casablanca comes along, changes that as well. Like, he's now, movie star, leading man, heartthrob, Humphrey Bogart. But at that age, he's like 48.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit younger than that. So, but then his career takes a really interesting turn because he does African Queen with Katharine Hepburn, which is, I mean, African Queen, I think, is very underrated. It's two aging stars playing their own age in like a really great film.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people talk about it, so it's not really underrated, but it's so refreshing to see like Katharine Hepburn play, you know, an older woman against an older leading man.
And it's like a romance.
Yeah, exactly. African Queen's great. And then his second half of his career is kind of, he's caught in limbo between what we see in this, which is like a smooth talking, very cool, like man of action, and like a kind of leading man, I guess. It's weird. His careers are kind of all over the place. As like the audience reactions change. But I mean, to me, he's the epitome of cool.
Mm.
You know, if I could look as good as Bogart, I'd do it. I don't know what it is, because he's not classically handsome,
right?
In any way, kind of thing. It's just the voice and the kind of
confidence.
It's all of it. Yeah, it's all of it.
Yeah.
And after I watched this, I've actually, you know, gone back and watched a few other of his films. I mean, I watched Casablanca again because Casablanca is so good, and then I watched The Big Sleep, which I thought I'd seen, but I hadn't. And he's just, I mean, he's like tough talking, but he's also funny, and like he's attractive to the feet. It's just a great mix.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of Bogart to unpack.
Yeah.
I feel like that was all over the place. But
no, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, you know, maybe I just need to watch more of his films.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, out of the ones that you kind of listed, I know I've seen Maltese Falcon, which, like you said, is more of a classic film noir detective story.
Yeah.
With a simple plot, right? He's just like,
yeah,
you know, trying to find this thing. But yeah, I mean, he is great in this film.
Yeah.
But there are a couple of things that just kind of are weird. And I think it's mainly just the relationship with his ex-wife. Like, he tries to sleep with her, even though she's with someone else. And then, you know, he's kind of harassing her throughout the movie. Mm-hmm. And then he's like in the restaurant scene where he's like, the waiter's like, would you like any appetizers? And he's like, I've got mine right here. And then the guy comes in and he's like, there's a phone call for you. And he's like, I'm feeding. And then when he finally goes to take the phone call, he tells the waiter to call her Mrs. Hutchinson, which she's not married to him anymore. Which is like, it's all just kind of dick move after dick move that don't really help.
At the time, it could have probably seemed romantic. But now, you know,
it's like
it's kind of borderline gaslighting.
Yeah. And then he like brings in this creepy doll out of nowhere, and it's like, what's going on with this scene? And then he just and then all of a sudden the doll's gone, and that's weird.
I think going back, I think the good thing about Bogart though is that you could pick any of his top 10 movies, and he's a different character in all of them.
Yeah.
Which I don't know how many other people you can say that about.
Yeah, especially that time. Getting typecast and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And by different character, you just mean like, I don't know. Like,
not like typecast, you know, because we've got Casablanca, romantic lead. You've got Maltese Falcon, where he's like, you know, the noir detective. And then you've got like Treasure of Sierra Madre, where he's like a gold digger that slowly is losing his mind. Angels with Dirty Faces is a gangster. You know, all these kind of different, I don't know, performances.
Yeah.
That just really, really work. So
you're selling me on them. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot there to love. You know, there's a lot of terrible films in there, you know, probably on the upcome and then the come down. But yeah, I don't know. They don't make stars like that anymore. He's one of those, to me, that's just larger than life. You know, I can't believe that he existed.
Yeah.
I can't put it into words.
Yeah.
So that's what sold it on. I mean, this was a Bogart film that I hadn't seen. And I knew about it. You know, I'd seen the poster for it. I knew it was kind of in the later part of his career, because it's the film after he won the Oscar. Well, he hadn't won it when he filmed it, but he'd just made The African Queen.
Okay.
So this was the film after African Queen, where he got like a lot of plaudits and people were celebrating his performance. So I always like to see what they follow up with after those big performances, you know. And this just seems a bit paint by numbers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know. So it's a weird one.
Yeah. What about any of the other actors in the film, Ethel Barrymore or Kim Hunter?
Yeah, I mean, so Kim Hunter, another relation or tedious link, I guess, to Facing the Crowd, won the same year as Bogart for Streetcar Named Desire, directed by Kazan. So she was also on the way up. You know, if you think about it today, if we had a film that was coming out with two stars that had just won Oscars, it would have been huge. You know, the kind of the campaign to get that seen. Whereas with this, it's not ever really talked about. You know,
right? Yeah.
And I think that's because of the studio system.
Yeah.
They just crank these out all the time. It just means that people are going to go and see it. It's not about art.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, it's more about ticket sales.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, Ethel Barrymore, I've seen her in, you know, numerous things. I know the name.
She plays Barrymore dynasty.
Yeah, she plays the old curmudgeonly woman, if it's curmudgeonly, in quite a lot. You know, she is that kind of person. So
yeah.
And then I think, apart from that, there wasn't many people in it that I recognized, apart from one person that, after we watched it, I had to rewind for us to see it. A little bright-faced Jimmy Dean.
Yeah, has a tiny little non-speaking cameo. He's just like around the corner.
It's the kind of thing where I knew he was going to be in it, and I saw it, and I was like, I don't think that's him. And then I kind of continued watching. And then at the end, I was like, okay, let's go back, because I think it could have been, but I wasn't sure. Mm-hmm. And it's just like smiling at Humphrey Bogart working in the printing press.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, when watching the movie the second time, I paused it and showed Sarah. I was like, look, it's James Dean. And, but when I didn't really say it at first, I just showed her the freeze frame. And the thing that caught her eye was she was like, I've never seen Humphrey Bogart smile like that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's like got a big smile on his face.
Yeah.
And it is kind of, you don't really think about it, but it is strange.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That you need to watch African Queen. He's grinning the whole way through it.
Well, cool. Yeah, I will. I've got it on VHS.
Oh, cool.
But I might find it somewhere else because I think it's like still in the plastic wrap, so I don't really want to open it.
Oh no! Yeah, keep it preserved.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, as far as like essential newspaper films, besides this one, like what else is there out there? I know there's Ace in the Hole, directed by Billy Wilder, which I haven't seen, but I'm sure you've seen that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that an essential newspaper film?
I mean, I'd say so. It's not my favorite Wilder film, but I know people love it. Yeah. And maybe it just needs me to go back and watch it again. Mm-hmm. You know. But the only other film that kind of sprang to mind, I mean, there's a lot of characters that are like newspaper reporters in especially film noir, because they're just trying to sniff out a story. You know, they'll just keep digging. But the only other film that I thought about that's kind of set around a newspaper is His Girl Friday. Howard Hawks directed with Cary Grant. One of the early kind of fast-talking screwball comedies.
Yeah.
Which is really good. I've only seen it the once. And it is like the dialogue just like flies. You can't really keep track of it. But that's another one that I kind of just came to mind when I thought newspaper film.
Yeah.
You know.
Would you call Citizen Kane a newspaper film?
I guess. I mean, yeah, it's about a kind of newspaper tycoon's rise to the top, right? So, yeah, I think, the only thing that would set that apart is it's just more character driven.
Yeah.
Whereas the other ones, like the newspaper, is a huge part of the story.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I guess in Kane it is a huge part of the story. And we can get mixed up in semantics all the time. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't think about Kane. That's a good shout.
And the show you're watching right now, Daredevil, has a lot of newspaper stuff in it.
Yeah, maybe that's why this didn't work on so many levels, because Daredevil did it really well. Which sounds really weird saying, because I was watching them, simultaneously.
Yeah.
It's kind of maybe what I was expecting was what Daredevil was delivering.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, one of the surprising things to me, or just kind of mind-boggling, I guess, in watching the second time, was when Humphrey Bogart's character mentions that the paper has 1,500 employees. And I'm like, gosh, like, can you imagine?
I don't think it's got that many readers, because I'm sure they talk about how they're like not even the top seller. There's 3 or 4 newspapers in New York that are selling more. Which again is another avenue it could have gone down in terms of like, is integrity worth it?
Right, yeah.
Is it worth keeping this newspaper open if they're losing sales while trying to report the truth?
Yeah.
Which again is another strand that I thought we were going to go down, and then sadly got overlooked for, I don't know, a $1 at a table. Yeah. Which, if you haven't seen the film, isn't going to make much sense, but yeah, that scene was really weird.
Yeah. They just need more puzzles in the paper. They'll be fine.
That's it, yeah. Some, how to make friends and some recipes for pies.
So, just a little bit of behind-the-scenes stuff. Apparently, Humphrey Bogart was kind of testy on the set.
Yeah.
Which wasn't usually his way of being on set. It was usually more friendly. He was someone who took pride in memorizing his lines, but he didn't memorize a lot of them on this film.
Yeah.
And his assistant had to read his lines to him a lot of times, and if she put any kind of like inflection or anything like that, he would like yell at her and be like, "How dare you? You must read this in just like a flat monotone, and like, how dare you suggest the way that I should say this?"
Yeah, I read in his biography that when the film wrapped, he turned to her and said, "Thank God I don't have to hear your voice ever again."
Jeez.
And she said, "Same."
That's great.
The book that I kind of like flicked through to this bit did suggest that he was kind of getting the news, or like kind of anticipating the news that he had cancer at this point.
Yeah.
And he that was kind of playing on his mind. They said that there's a point where they were kind of getting ready to shoot, and Ethel Barrymore was like coughing quite a lot, and he kind of turned to her and kind of yelled like, "You need to go and get that checked out."
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So, there's a lot kind of preying on his mind. But also, he was apparently in between takes, he was on the phone finding out how African Queen was doing.
Yeah.
Trying to kind of, that was where his energy was. He was just making a picture to kill time. Yeah.
Yeah. Making some money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a scene where he didn't learn his lines, and he admitted to the director that he had been drinking late into the morning. And God, I can't imagine like drinking late into the morning and then showing up for work.
Trying to act.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's what Bogart's famous for, though. Heavy smoking, heavy drinking.
Yeah.
I'm sure I read somewhere it was 60 a day, cigarettes.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that could be a huge exaggeration, but I'm sure it stuck with me. I'm sure it was 60 a day.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't even know how many cigarettes are in a pack. I mean, I guess it might have been different back then.
Yeah, back then, like maybe 20, I guess. So 3 packs a day.
Yeah. God, that's crazy.
Yeah, I know.
Don't smoke.
No, definitely not. So he obviously smoking, drinking a lot. It's just
takes a toll.
Yeah.
Apparently he, in order to get the feel for what it was really like to work in a newspaper, he hung out at the city room of the New York Daily News.
I feel like that's the Bogart that we should know, is that kind of professional of like, I want to get this as authentic as possible.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that for Casablanca he went and hid out in a bar in Casablanca and
learned how to make some drinks.
That's it, yeah. But I mean, it's just that extra step that you don't see many people take.
Yeah.
So
another thing that Ed Mueller mentioned in the commentary was that that I thought was really cool was that a lot of screenwriters come from newspapers or came from newspapers back then. And the way that they're like laying out the timeline of like the newspaper for the next day and stuff is something that screenwriters still do today. And that comes from the working in newspapers.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's like I said, there's a lot of authenticity in this film. It feels real. But there's not that balance,
Yeah.
Unfortunately. I do want to talk about Richard Brooks because he was a name that I didn't know. Mm-hmm. And then when I kind of went on his page just to see what else he'd done, he's directed some really great films.
Yeah.
Which I wasn't aware of. I mean, In Cold Blood, based on my favorite book. We've talked about this in the past, Truman Capote's In Cold Blood. I've watched the film. It's really good. To say I love the book so much, the film is a really faithful adaptation. Cat on a Hot Tin Roof with Elizabeth Taylor, Paul Newman, like a really well-known kind of classic for Elizabeth Taylor. The Professionals as well. I mean, there's a lot that he made,
contributed, and
a lot of these. I mean, Blackboard Jungle, with Sidney Poitier. Some really important films.
Yeah.
But he's not a director that I would be like, oh, Richard Brooks, he did this, this, and this. You know?
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
it might be someone that we're going to have to remember.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, In Cold Blood is a film that I want to choose in the future.
Yeah.
Sweet. Because I think it's a really interesting film.
Yeah. Well, I will look forward to that.
Yeah. There's a lot that's just on my list for to watch.
Yeah. Everything.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Every time you say, oh, I haven't seen it, I'm like, add it to the list.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So all of Bogart's filmography has been added today.
Exactly. And Richard Brooks.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot more that I have to say about this movie. I think if I did want to rewatch it, I might choose it if there's someone over at the house that used to work in a newspaper or something like that hadn't seen it. Mm-hmm. I would want to watch it with someone with some kind of connection like that or experience, just to kind of watch the movie through them. And kind of to see how they experience it, see if they're, crying at the end and when the paper gets sold. And, that was the thing, man. It's like as far as like all those plots that they introduce, it's kind of a weird way that they all end. It's like the paper gets sold anyway.
Yeah.
Rienzi gets exposed, I guess, but it's like, he's exposed, the end.
Yeah.
And then the wife, we find out that she's going to take him back. But the way that we find out is while he's on the phone with Rienzi, she takes off her hat. And that's how we know. Because she flicks her hat off and there's no dialogue. Yeah. It's very strange. But, I mean, at least for that character, he got one thing that he wanted, and hopefully he'll give his wife the attention that she deserves now, I guess, because he can't love the paper anymore.
I think that's the frustration is that, like, you summing it up there, I'm like, wow, that sounds really profound. Like, it sounds like a really, like maybe I am part of this old group and this, like, newspaper business is kind of not for me anymore. So I'm like, I found what I really love, which is my wife. And instead it's just like, hey, we got him.
Yeah.
Where is this emotional payoff? Let's do this. Like, all it would have taken was to not have Bogart do that courtroom scene, and in the end just be like, I thought I knew what I loved, but maybe I'm a relic and you're the thing that I want to be with.
Yeah, or just not have his wife right there where he can't speak to her and he's just on the phone. Like, have him make the phone call and think that his wife is already married to the guy and he's just lost both things that he loves. But then after he like hangs up that phone and he's like, well, I got Rienzi, we're printing the last paper, won't have a job or a wife tomorrow. And then his wife comes around the corner and she's like, in a wedding dress, and she's like, I didn't do it.
Yeah.
I want you back,
Yeah, exactly. But nope, just takes off the hat inside.
Just short of like ripping her dress off.
That's right.
This head is yours, babe. Head only.
Yeah. And I think that's where my problems lie. Like I said, it's just that I think the film sets up quite a lot and then doesn't deliver on any of it, really.
Yeah.
There's a lot of... To say that when it ended, I think I audibly was like, oh. I was expecting at least one more scene.
Yeah, exactly.
Just tie it up, and instead it's just like, oh, it's over now.
Yeah. One more thing that I forgot to mention is the mother of the woman who dies in the film that they're like trying to figure out, and then they find out Rienzi murdered her.
Oh,
she's like an immigrant. Ed Muller mentioned that Richard Brooks's that was basically Richard Brooks's mother, not real mother in the scene or whatever, but it was very personal for him because his mother was an immigrant and learned to read from newspapers and stuff, and learned to speak English from newspapers and stuff. So, which she, the character in the film mentions that. So I think that was.
Yeah, and I mean, that's fair enough. I just, as I said before, the preachiness of it just didn't. It just left me cold. It's kind of like, here's another character saying why integrity, and which it is. It is a good thing, but when every character's hitting you over the head, telling you that freedom of press is a wonderful thing, it's kind of like, okay, I get it. I know.
Yeah.
He is the good guy. This is the paper.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, let's try to guess what each of us rated this film on Letterboxd.
Okay. So
let me guess first, because every time you guess first, I know to go lower.
Okay.
When you guess me, I'm like, you definitely went lower.
Okay. Now I know that it's going to be higher.
Yeah, that's true. Or it could be the same. I don't know. We've been the same the last few weeks or several weeks. I don't know.
Yeah.
Somebody might be keeping track out there. I'm going to say you rated it 3.
Okay. I don't know if you've thrown me off. I'm going to say you've rated it. I mean, I know you said that it got better on the second watch. So maybe 3.5.
All right. I was 3.
Okay, I was 2.5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
I didn't know if you were trying to throw me off by being like, sometimes we're the same. So that'd be like 3, and you'd be like, nope, 3.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for all the reasons that we've talked about, I think Bogart's really good. I think there's like there's hints of a really interesting film in here. It just doesn't quite stick the landing
for you. Yeah.
Yeah. But like I said, I've only watched it once and then once again with the commentary on. So maybe, if I watched it again, it would work. And I'm getting ready to watch more Bogart films, so maybe it'll slip in again before the end of the year. So,
yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
And did it change for you? I mean, were you lower when you first watched it and then it changed?
I think so. I mean, maybe like 2.5 to 3, but it wasn't much. It's like I understand the film now. I get why people appreciate it, but I don't have that like emotional investment that other people that love this film do. You know what I mean? So yeah. I mean, it's like I said, I get it because of, being in love with cinema and not wanting like theaters to go away and things like that, like I've worked in movie theaters for a long time, and I don't ever want to see that kind of die.
Yeah.
And everything's going to streaming and stuff like that. So that's kind of like where I relate to it, but yeah. But yeah. That was Deadline U.S.A, folks. So what are we watching next week, Lewis?
So next week we are watching a film from just 2 years after Deadline U.S.A.
Okay.
But it's not an American film.
All right.
It's a film I feel like has got a specific place in film history, and I've never seen it. It is Godzilla from 1954. Really? Yeah, the original.
Nice.
I don't know why. It's one of those films that I'm like, I need to watch this at some point.
Yeah.
And I was like, why not? I mean, there's a few other films that was bouncing around, but I was like, let's do it. Let's watch Godzilla. I don't think it's overly long. I don't think it's, I mean, it's Godzilla. So
yeah. Yeah, it looks like it's an hour and a half, and
nice.
Also on Criterion.
Yeah. I don't own it because it's in that big box set. But yeah, man,
Takayashi Shimura.
Yeah.
From Seven Samurai is in it. Sorry if
I is he really?
His name, yeah.
Oh,
he plays like the old wise samurai. Yeah.
He is going to be my top watched actor this year on Letterboxd. I just know it. Because every Kurosawa film I watch, he's in.
Yeah.
So now that I'm watching Godzilla and Mifune isn't in it, he's going to pip him to the post. So.
Yeah. Beat him by 1.
Yeah. But Godzilla, next week.
Yeah. Looking forward to it. That's going to be fun. Changing it up. Get some action in here.
Yeah. A little bit of a monster blockbuster. We see them a lot. So I'll be interested to see the similarities between that and what we have today.
Yeah, for sure. If there's any homage.
And that's right.
Well, I think that's it, folks. Of course, you can find us on all the social medias. Please give us a follow if you haven't already. At Film Church Radio on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Subscribe. You can also find Lewis and I on Letterboxd individually. I am at Selmascope, and he is at Walker Lewis 3007. There you can keep up with what we've been watching every single day and what we rate things and what's on our top lists and what's on our watch lists and what, let us know what we should add to those lists. We also have all of our back episodes streaming on all good podcast platforms. Please spread the love and come and join the Film Church so you too can be on the path of cinematic enlightenment. But Lewis, what is that racket?
That's the press, baby. The press. And there's nothing you can do about it.
Well, alrighty then. I'll leave you to it. Thanks for listening, everybody. Don't forget to say your Film Church prayers, and we'll see you next Sunday.
Sounds good. Amen.
Amen.
Bye.
Peace.